see. Hold on just a second. All right, Wendy, you're seeing the big screen, nothing but the slide, right? Okay,
Perfect.
I'm going to actually put down the pictures so nothing is in the recording. So we've titled this Deepening Our Understanding of Dementia and Alzheimer's. This is one of those topics that's forever changing. When I first started working in a nursing home, it's been a long time now, so like 2006, I remember we would use the terminology, that individual is demented. It was really, you took the person out of it, and that was like the focus of what it was. That person is demented, and it feels like such a negative way to look at things. The terminology has really changed in the way that we put the person first, with all sorts of diseases and issues that people have. So we really talk about people that have dementia. They're still people first. There's still a lot left there. And we'll talk a lot about that in this presentation, about how we kind of change our focus away from what people are losing and what they've lost, and focus on what they still have, and that they're still basically themselves, and how we can access some of that and still make connection, even though their cognition has changed. So you can't control this whole thing of dementia and memory loss. You can only control your reaction to it, and that's what we'll cover today, are different kinds of ways we can react and interact with people that have dementia, so that we are more successful as volunteers, that we can bring them and ourselves some joy, and really fulfill what we're all here to do. So remembering that for people with dementia, their disability is memory loss, buying 100% into that, not expecting them to remember you from visit to visit, not expecting that they, depending on where they're at in their progression, that they, remember their kids, or that they remember things that happened 5 minutes ago. They might have a little more grasp for longer on long-term kinds of memories, but certainly asking them, what you had for breakfast and what your plans are for the rest of the day probably aren't things that they can remember anymore. So we just want to keep that in mind. I didn't know these slides were going to do this whole thing, Becky. It's cool. Mm-hmm. So for like I click and a new thing comes up. So I'm going to provide an overview of dementia in general, some of the different types of dementia, prevalence kinds of statistics. And then my section's going to end with a video that is done by Teepa Snow, which I think some of you have had some education with Teepa Snow videos in the past. She's really a cool lady and an expert on working with people with dementia, caring for them, and she'll kind of overview how she's replaced the stages of dementia with a totally different and cool idea. So dementia in and of itself is actually, they don't consider it a disease specifically because it encompasses so many different types. It's a group of thinking and social symptoms that interfere with daily functioning. So here you can see dementia is a loss of cognitive functioning, your brain cells, your brain chemistry. We won't get into plaques and tangles and all of those things, but it's not a single thing. Dementia is not Alzheimer's disease. It's not Lewy body dementia. It's not frontal lobe dementia or Korsakoff syndrome. All of those things have dementia-like symptoms. It's a group of conditions characterized by impairment of at least 2 brain functions, an example being memory loss and judgment. And in the different types of dementia, you might see different manifestations of these symptoms. And so someone with Alzheimer's disease might exhibit their first symptoms are really memory related, or somebody with Lewy body dementia might have more of personality changes, or they might have more overt behavioral issues than someone that has Alzheimer's disease. Someone that's diagnosed with dementia, their life expectancy is varied on how old they are. So somebody that's diagnosed younger, and some people as young in their 40s or 50s with early onset dementia, They can live a really, really long time. They've probably lived with dementia long before it was diagnosed, and they can live 10 or more years if they were diagnosed at an age younger than 89, which seems fairly old, but life expectancy has creeped up, and that's why we see more dementia now than perhaps our grandparents did. If you're about 90, your life expectancy is lower. That's probably a lot to do with other chronic diseases that people have. Some of the main symptoms of dementia include forgetfulness, difficulty or limited social skills. Thinking abilities are so impaired that they actually interfere with the person's day-to-day life. And eventually, dementia will result in the loss of a person's ability to swallow their food and chew. They will forget how to do that. And that's often what really precipitates the very end of life for someone with dementia. There are medications and therapies that can help manage symptoms, but of course, there's no cure at this point for dementia. There was a drug that came out earlier this year, maybe late last year, that I couldn't believe how expensive it was. It was unbelievably expensive, and really the research behind it wasn't very solid. I don't know how widespread the usage of that is actually going to be. So we talked a little bit about this box at all. It refers to a group of symptoms that involve your brain. And your brain, of course, affects all of your bodily functions. And so after it starts affecting your memory and your thinking, it's going to start affecting things like your balance and your chewing and your swallowing. Dementia is always progressive, which means that things slowly get worse. One thing that's not on this slide that I want to make sure that as hospice volunteers, that we know the difference between are dementia and delirium, because those are, they can manifest and look a lot alike, but they're very, very different things. Delirium is reversible. So you think of someone that maybe was in the hospital and just had like a hip surgery, and they were heavily medicated and they're coming out of anesthesia, and they're forgetful and they don't know who you are, and they're anxious and they're manifesting some of these behavioral symptoms. And it's sudden, it's a sudden onset. That is called delirium, and usually will clear up when the medication clears someone's system. Delirium might be caused by dehydration. There's a lot of things, especially in older adults, that cause that really quick turnaround in their brain function. But delirium is reversible, where dementia is not. Right now, about 3% of adults ages 70 to 74 have a dementia diagnosis, 22% of adults from 85 to 89, and then about a third of adults over the age of 90. So the incidence goes up as people get older, but still, when you think about that, 2/3 of people aren't exhibiting that, and so it's probably not a normal part of aging. Women are slightly more likely to have dementia than men, and those stats look like 11% among 70 and older. That doesn't make any sense, so let's skip that. The number overall is 6 million people in the US right now that are currently diagnosed. And I keep thinking about my mom's generation. She's at the very, very tail end of the baby boomers, so she just turned 60. The baby boomers are ages about 60 to 80 right now. And if that percentage continues at what it is, with 6% in one age group and up to 22 for a third by age 90, we're going to have just a lot more people. It doesn't even matter if the percentage stays the same. It's going to be an enormous amount of people coming up that are going to be experiencing dementia. The last part of this slide has the different types, and there's more than this. Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. Vascular dementia is usually caused by a stroke or a series of strokes. Lewy body dementia is often associated with Parkinson's disease. Wernicke-Korsakoff's, I mentioned that earlier. I've met a couple people with that. That's generally, well, it always is alcohol induced. Someone that's had a really long history of heavy alcohol usage. And then Huntington's disease also has a kind of a specific form of dementia that goes along with it that has its own symptoms as well. So the progression of dementia, we have traditionally thought of in stages. Usually with Alzheimer's, it's the pre-diagnosis stage, and then that moment where something starts to be wrong. And that moves into the mild stage, the middle stage, the late stage. And if you, depending on what you're reading, those can be the early stage, the mid, early stage, the late. I mean, they get very, very particular with how many stages there are and what particular symptoms are exhibited in those stages. That's still around, and you'll hear a lot about the stages of dementia. What Becky put in this video that we're going to watch by Teepa Snow is that when we talk about stages of dementia, it's always sort of in terms of what the person loses. And so it's a negative outlook on, oh, now they can't do this and they can't remember that, and we can't have those conversations, and I can't take them out into public. And so framing it in that negative way is what we're trying to get away from. It's useful to think of stages, but again, we want to humanize people as much as we can, especially as volunteers when we're coming in with that clean slate. So we're going to watch a video by Teepa Snow, and it's got this idea of GEMS. Teepa is one of the world's leading advocates and educators for anyone living with dementia or other forms of brain change. She's an occupational therapist. So if you go online, there's just endless videos by her. You can watch entire day-long workshops that she's done. And as an occupational therapist, she'll give you a lot of physical cues of how you can help people put their coat on, or get the cup in their hand, or why people like to hold on to you. They're very useful, and you can usually find a little snippet that will have something to do with what you want to learn about. Let's see if I want to say anything else before the video. Okay, so I'm going to start this. It's going to be about 12 minutes long. And so again, this is instead of the stages idea, Teepa is going to describe that as GEMS. And it might take me a minute to get the correct, I want it to be big. I guess that's fine.
We can't hear the volume, but I guess.
Okay. Can nobody hear the volume?
No,
Brett, cannot
No,
hear.
I can't either.
No volume.
Nope, can't hear it.
It was the video was playing, right?
yeah, just
Started.
a second.
Wendy, I'm going to bring you up. Trying to consider why that would be that way.
When you did share screen, did you hit also share sound before you shared the PowerPoint screen?
That could be it. There it is. The little box isn't checked. Thank you.
Whoa, bravo, Becky.
Yeah.
All right, let's try that again. We didn't get too far.
Nope. Not working.
Okay.
I like your earrings.
It's still, okay, it still didn't have the box checked. Times. Now is it checked?
Just about the loss. It's always about what do they have left.
And now
I took the scales that were out there and looked at them, and frankly, they're pretty depressing. They emphasize too much. Uh-oh, what's going to happen next? And it's not a good
there
thing.
we go.
So what I decided is let's stop talking about people as though they were less. And let's start looking at people as though they still have something. My job as a care partner is to figure out how to provide the right support and the right care so they can shine. Quit thinking about them as numbers. Is this a stage 1, 2, or 3, or a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? And instead, how about if we looked at how are they precious? How are they unique? What do they have that I can still use to help them live life? Because life happens, and we're both going to live it So how's it going to be? So I thought, how about gems? How about if we thought about people as precious and unique? There's not a single gem that I know of that people don't find attractive and interesting. And if I could get you to think about people as having something positive, something good, and I got you to see them that way and understand them that way, then you may be more interested in providing the right setting and the right care so they can shine. And so what I did is I took a scale that's out there, Allen Cognitive Levels, cognitive disabilities. It's something used in occupational therapy. And I took that and I built off of that. And what we have are gems, 6 of them, 6 levels. Sapphires and diamonds and emeralds and ambers and rubies and pearls. All of those are amazing gems, but they're all different. They're all unique. They all have characteristics. Now, the way I organize this is sapphire. Notice how it's on the other hand. It's a little special. It's a brain that's true blue. It's a brain that's not experiencing the changes that come with things like dementia. Instead, this is a brain that's flexible, it's organized, it's able to work with all these other gems. And when you're a care provider, it's really important to be a partner who is flexible and not really struggling on your own. But the reality is you're probably going to experience some moments that aren't sapphire-like. When that happens, take a break, because you do want to be a sapphire to care for the gems. How does this disease change over time? Let's talk about unfortunately, the gems. It's about typically what people talk about is loss. Oh, it's
Not sure.
what do they have left? And so I took the scales that were out there and looked at them. And frankly, they're pretty depressing. They emphasize too much, what's going to happen next? And it's not a good thing. So what I decided is, let's stop talking about worse, it's worse, it's worse, as though they and were it's going to get harder. And let's start looking at people as though they still have something. My job as a care partner is to figure out how to provide the right support and the right care so they can shine. Quit thinking about them as numbers. Is this a stage 1, 2, or 3, or a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? And instead, how about if we looked at, how are they precious? How are they unique? What do they have that I can still use to help them live life? Because life happens, and we're both going to live it. So how's it going to be? So I thought, how about gems? How about if we thought about people as precious and unique? There's not a single gem that I know of that people don't find attractive and interesting. And if it's a brain that's true blue. It's a brain that's not experiencing the changes that come with things like dementia. Instead, this is a brain that's flexible, it's organized, it's able to work with all these other gems. And when you're a care provider, it's really important to be a partner who is flexible and not really struggling on your own. But the reality is you're probably going to experience some moments that aren't sapphire-like. When that happens, take a break, because you do want to be a sapphire to care for the gems. Now, let's talk about the gems. Diamonds, emeralds, ambers, rubies, and pearls. Diamonds, clear, sharp, but rigid, have lots of facets to them, but inflexible. Not liking change, but absolutely able to shine. But diamonds can also cut you. They can hurt you because they still are who they were, but they're different. They're clear and they're sharp. So you may not even believe or think that this is real, that they have a dementia, because they know what they're doing, that she's just being stubborn. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes things like zirconians can trick you. They look like the real deal and they're not. But if you see somebody who's acting like a diamond, if you experience diamond behavior, create the right setting and the right care, things get better. If you don't recognize it, you can get cut. So when someone is in a diamond state, what we're talking about is rigid, inflexible. I'm very good with habit and routine, the things I've always done. I'm not so good with new stuff. I don't like change, and I don't like people telling me what to do if they never told me what to do. If you were always an authority figure, we're probably in good shape. I may follow you around more and shadow you, but I won't argue with you. But if you've never been the boss of me, this is going to get to be a real problem. Emeralds, things are changing. And unlike the diamond, it's not clear and sharp anymore. There's a color, you've noticed. This is usually about the time most people get identified as having something going on. This is emerald, green, go. In a stoplight sequence, the green light is go. These people are going, but they aren't always sure where. Their words are not always clear and sharp like they used to be. Their direction and the time frame, it's not always where they think they are and where you thought they were. Emeralds are always flawed, but the emerald doesn't know that. They think they're fine. Everything's fine. So if they have a problem, you're it. Or if there is a flaw, well, it doesn't matter. So this is where we start to notice changes in my ability to do things. I'm making mistakes. I'm skipping steps. I'm getting lost in a day. I get lost in my life. I think you're a different person than you are. I think I'm in a different place than I'm in. I start a task and then I go do another task having not finished that. I get turned around pretty easily. I have a flaw. But if you match up and you don't point out my flaw, it goes a lot better. So with emeralds, things are changing for both of you. And I'm no longer clear and sharp. I am struggling. And I may not know that. Guess who will be struggling? You, if you're not careful, because you want what we had before and you aren't going to be able to have that. Now let's talk about the next gem. Ambers. Yeah, most of you don't really like ambers in real life with dementia, but let me describe amber. Amber is one of the most interesting gems because it actually isn't a found in the ground gem. It's something like sap coming out of a tree and something getting stuck in it and then more sap and then it hardens up a little bit. It's something caught in a moment of time. And that's where these folks are. They're in a moment of time. It's all about sensation. It's all about what does it feel like? What does it look like? What can I do with it? Do I like it? Don't I like it? I'm in a moment. I don't have caution. I don't have safety awareness. I'm all about if I want it now. And if I don't like it, I'm not doing it. And so this is often where, as a care provider, you really struggle because my behavior is so inconsistent with who I used to be. But an amber is an amber. They aren't a diamond or an emerald, and they certainly aren't a sapphire. So this is the point in the disease where you might see me engaging in ways, because I'm still very interested and curious, but I don't know whether it's safe or not. So I may pick up things and do things with them, and it's not okay. I invade your space. I take things. I mess with stuff. And I may have a low sensory need or a high sensory need for any of the 5 senses, but I don't have safety awareness, and I wear you out because I'm not always good at when and when not to sleep. It's sort of like if I feel like it, I do. Not all the time, but it's important to notice in the moment. Critical to be a sapphire. You struggle to not be a diamond at this point.
Have you considered going solar in Colorado but afraid of the huge price tag attached? Most people don't know this, but almost 100.
Oh yes, we can become diamonds. Don't think it's all about dementia. It's about brain change. And in a moment, you can have a diamond moment, you little sapphires. In other words, you get frustrated with what's going on and you have a hard time, particularly with ambers. The next gem, ruby. Now, ruby's changing yet again. We're no longer a caution light. We're at the stoplight. And what stops is all fine motor skill. But what do I keep? Big movement and strength. I've got some strength, but I don't have skill. So what you're going to notice in those times, I've lost fine motor in my eyes, in my fingers, in my mouth, and in my feet. So I have trouble figuring things out visually. I have trouble chewing and swallowing sometimes, but for sure, getting speech out. But I still have rhythm and I still have music. That's the gift. That's something I can still do because it feels like to you it should be skill, but it's actually sort of automatic. So with rubies, although I lost the fine skill, I still have the big. So my hands now are more gross. I don't manipulate, I hold. And because I keep strength, unfortunately, I can grab onto something And if that something is you, I could hurt you. I don't mean to. I like pressure. I like to hold on to stuff. I don't always know how to let go. Sometimes you're having that problem too, because you're, again, slipping from here to here because you're going from a sapphire to a diamond. If you find those moments, and you will with rubies, because it's so scary, I can't settle down. I can't get started. It's a struggle. You need to take that step back and time yourself out. Take a deep breath, get oxygen to your brain, let go of what was so you can be that sapphire. Oh, and that's critically important when we get to this last gem, the pearl. Now, I selected the pearl for this state because at that moment, think of the outside of an oyster shell. And as you look at that oyster shell, I've got to tell you, that is one of the ugliest things you'll ever see in this world. And you never think that on the outside of an oyster shell, you're going to find this amazing thing. And at the end of this disease, what this disease does to the human body is pretty ugly. It turns on reflexes. It shuts down systems. It's making it very difficult. I lose my gross motor. And what I'm ruled by? Reflexes. I'm actually stuck. I'm trapped. But with the right care, the shell relaxes just a little. And in there you find this amazing gem, a pearl, built layer upon layer on a single grain of sand. This amazing gem, still in there, but often trapped. And sometimes, if you're not careful, you spend way too much energy worrying about the shell, and you miss the most important thing. That's not the gem. With the right care, you get to see the real gem. This amazing person, not who they used to be, but I'm still in there. I'm me, but I'm different. I'm not a ruby or an amber or an emerald or a diamond. I'm not the sapphire I may have once been, but I'm still there, and I'm still me, but I'm different. The question for all of us is, can we see the precious and unique? Can we experience the person as this amazing gem of great value and give them the right setting and the right care so they can shine?
I'm going to hand it over to Becky to start the next spot. You're there, Becky?
I am here, yes.
Okay, I'm going to start my screen share again. As I'm going through this, I'll try to keep up with where you are as the things come up on the slides. I'll be paying close attention.
They come. I made it so that it's kind of, or if you want to flip the share or whatever, but
Give it a go.
before we move forward though, does anyone have any questions just about that section of kind of the way dementia advances, or what, what Amanda shared about what dementia
They're going
is,
to get it.
all those things? Anybody? Well, as volunteers, you will take a patient that could be in any season of dementia or Alzheimer's. It may be that you are with someone in their late 90s, early 100s that is in late stage Alzheimer's, and that's probably the pearl stage, but it could be that you end up with someone in their 70s, 80s, whose primary diagnosis is something else, but they happen to have dementia. It progressed in one of these stages. No matter who you end up with, who you say yes to spend your time, communication is just so essential, so much a part of what all of you do as volunteers. So we're going to go through the do's and don'ts of communicating with someone who has dementia. This is going to be a little bit of an all play, so get ready to participate, and we'll just start first with some do's. Go ahead, Amanda.
Okay.
So do give short 1-sentence explanations. Don't complicate things. Allow plenty of time for comprehension, and triple it. It's being comfortable, being uncomfortable sometimes. Repeat instructions or sentences exactly the same way. Avoid insistence. Try again later. Agree with them or distract them to a different subject or activity. Accept the blame when something's wrong, even if it's a fantasy. I say this often in volunteer training. As volunteers, we need to be hard to offend. It's not about us. Almost never is it about us. It's okay if we accept the blame, especially if we're taking the blame and that helps them connect with somebody in their family better. Leave the room if necessary to avoid confrontations. Respond to the feelings rather than the words. So a lot of what you're doing in communication, whether or not it's somebody with dementia, is you're taking in the whole of the person. You're looking at their body language. You're paying attention to what is the feeling perhaps behind the words that you hear, and you're addressing that feeling. Our goal in hospice is comfort, right? So we want people to be comfortable, comfortable where they are physically, comfortable where they are mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so as a volunteer, you really have a great privilege of being part of helping our patients be comfortable. Be patient and cheerful and reassuring. Do go with the flow. I loved Teepa's example of taking a breath, and that's okay. Sometimes we need to do that. Sometimes it might be frustrating when you're trying to understand what somebody's saying, especially if they're in a stage of dementia where their speech has been impacted. And just to be able to take a deep breath and to be positive with them and let them know that they have value that you want to understand. And practice 100% forgiveness. Memory loss progresses daily. Don't reason. Don't argue. Don't confront. Don't remind them they'll forget. Don't question recent memory. Don't take it personally. So we're going to practice, and I'm just going to look at my screen and call people out for four. You'll see a quoted, this is what the patient would say. And then I'm going to ask somebody before we give the answers here, Amanda, I'm going to ask for people to give a do and a don't, and then we'll look at what the suggested do and the don'ts are here. So the patient says, "What doctor appointment? There's nothing wrong with me." Jeff, what would be a good thing? Oh, there's two Jeffs. Jeffrey Waters, what would be a good thing to say? What's a do?
Well, I got the first one, huh?
Yep, you get the first one.
Well, I wouldn't touch, there's nothing wrong with me I wouldn't go near that. But I would just remind that there's we have an appointment today, and it's probably going to take a few reminders, but we do that.
So your don't would be, don't address that there's nothing wrong with me.
Correct.
And your do would be just a gentle reminder. Well, let's see what the experts say from the Alzheimer's Association. Don't reason. You've been seeing the doctor every 3 months for the last 2 years. It's written on the calendar. I told you about it yesterday morning. I can feel the frustration in that comment just by reading it. Do. Short explanation. Just a regular checkup. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. Taking the blame, lessening the burden on the patient. All right, my next person.
Some of you will come up with different ones, and there's many good or wrong answers to these. So
Jill is on my screen next. So I am going to ask Jill. The patient says, "I didn't write this check for $500. Someone at the bank is forging my signature." What would be a don't thing to say and a do thing to say?
The don't is easy. The don't would be to confront them and say, "Well, you must have, the bank says you did. So you must have, and you forgot." I think the do would be, maybe it's something like, perhaps there is a mistake, but let's look into it. Let's let the bank look into it. They're experts.
So validating their fear and then coming up with a simple solution. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's see what the experts say. Don't argue. What? Don't be silly. The bank wouldn't be forging your signature. Do distract. Would you help me fold the towels? That's good too, especially at my house.
And later stages, you can really divert quickly with music or with something that's on the TV, or look at this bird outside. And I mean, they'll forget really quickly. Keeping the purse or the checkbook out of sight, out of mind might avoid this from happening at all.
Very much so. Yes. My next person is Sharon, but Sharon, you're turned off. Sharon, are you okay going now? Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, good. So the statement is, nobody's going to make decisions for me. You can go now and don't come back. What would be a good response and what would be a not so good response?
Well, not so good one would be to basically tell them that they're not making good decisions and someone has to sort of help them out. In other words, making them, well, just sort of more of a confrontation type thing. Regarding the do, I don't know, I might say something like, I'm gonna, okay, I'm going to leave now, and I'll see you later, and then leave and then come back shortly later on the off chance that they might not remember that you just did that. Or, well, I'm not sure.
I like that response. What I heard in your response is you're giving the patient dignity, right? That
Yeah.
you're not saying, no, you need people to make decisions for you. So don't confront. I'm not going anywhere and you can't remember enough to make your own decisions, but do accept blame or respond to feeling, I'm sorry, this is a tough time. Reassure, I love you and we're going to get through this together, or distract. You know what? Dawn has a new job. Wendy has a new cat. He's really excited about it. Wendy doesn't have a new cat. I just was coming up with something.
I guess I took the coward's way out.
No, that was good too though, Sharon. If you left and then came back in, one, you're honoring, they said leave, so you're leaving. And then depending on how far advanced their memory loss is, that short-term memory, you really could come in and start fresh, try again.
Exactly.
So the point of volunteering a lot of the times is to provide companionship or respite, right? But connection, I would say, is something that no matter where you show up, no matter how you're volunteering, you're connecting with either the family or the patient. And so the goal of communication with our patients is connection. So here's number 4. The next person's gonna be in the hot seat, Amy McCormick. Joe hasn't called for a long time. I hope he's okay.
I would say the don't would be giving an update about Joe, especially if it was bad news. And the do would be something like complimenting Joe. Isn't Joe a great guy? Boy, we really love Joe. I'll have to check on him the next time I am at my computer emailing people. Something like that, maybe?
Yeah. Validating what they said. They're concerned for Joe. Let's see. Don't remind. Joe called yesterday and you talked with him for 15 minutes. Do reassure. You really like talking to him, don't you? Let's call him when we get back from our walk. Now, something you might find people making statements similar to this often. I think in dementia, you might hear, my children never call me. Well, they might have called that day. And so as a volunteer, we really don't know. Sometimes that might be absolutely true, that their children are not invested in their care and they're not calling. But lots of times it could be they're very invested, but their loved one their patient doesn't remember that. And so being reassuring, I think, is really helpful. Your daughter loves you a lot. Maybe we can give her a call when we get back to the room, or that's when you just might come across frequently, I think. So my next person is Peyton. Hi, Peyton. The statement is, hello, Mary. I see you've brought a friend with you. So you're introducing.
Like maybe it's your husband or your boyfriend, your long-term boyfriend, and you're bringing that your person with dementia knows this person.
Yeah,
but
they've
is
met
acting
them
like they don't.
before. Yeah. So what would be a don't? What would be a do?
Okay, I probably wouldn't assume that they like remember necessarily like who I'm bringing with me. I just reintroduce and everything and just try to be like, yep, I did bring a friend. We're here to visit with you. Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, not correcting them and saying, hey, you just met this person yesterday. Do you remember them? But my kids are getting loud in the background. Sorry, can you hear them unloading the dishwasher? I'm not sure what's happening down there. But just reintroduce. Long-term memory stays with people longer. Short-term memory is the first thing to leave. And so if they've met them in the last year, but you're their daughter and they've known you your whole life, they'll remember you, but might not remember the people who came into their life in the last year. My next person's Jenny with G. Who are you? Where's my husband? And you may be the husband or the wife.
I would not say I'm the husband or the wife, and I would introduce myself gently.
And I
Let's see.
suspect that would be hard to do as the husband and the wife.
Yes, I imagine that is a very significant loss for the loved one when that happens. That's something that you hear, as I was looking at different videos and preparing for this, just when the loved one doesn't know who you are, that's one of the hardest places for the family member. And the first thing here, it says, don't take it personally. What do you mean? Who's your husband? I am. So what's the do here?
So
I love that one.
Go with the flow, reassure. He'll be here for dinner. And that can ebb and flow too. One moment it could be, who are you? And then the next moment, oh. And something that's interesting, and maybe you all have encountered with some of the people you volunteered with, is often when someone has dementia as it progresses, and I think I have a little bit of this, I think I'm younger than I am. And then I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, wait, I'm in my 40s. I'm in my head, I'm in my 20s. And when somebody has dementia, they may see Peyton, who's in college, as a peer. They may see themselves as that similar age. And so when they see their husband in their 80s, that's not my husband. My husband's this hot 25-year-old, and so know that sometimes they'll talk about their parents and they're 95 years old, and they'll talk about being a child. So it's really interesting the places that their long-term memory will take and what will seem like it's the present when it's really a memory. So the next one, I think it's the next slide.
Becky, I'm gonna probably skip over the next one just in the interest of time. It's about 6:20.
Okay.
So I think these are good for what we've covered, I think. So I'm gonna skip through these and you can just see what they would have said.
Repeating
Well, you
instructions
told me
the
what
same
you
way.
wanted.
I could use that with my kids too.
I think accepting blame that's a very humbling thing for a person to do. And it will often translate that way to the person with dementia too, that, okay, they're taking responsibility and they'll move on from that. Okay.
So now we're going to do just an overview of some of the communication changes as dementia progresses. Early stage, this, is when their decisions seem harder to make. They may misinterpret what other people say. They might get offended a little bit easier. But they're able to use their words to convey their thoughts and feelings. And the middle stage, they use people with dementia in the middle stage would use basic words and sentences. They're really reading you not by what you're saying as much. And so this is important in volunteering, but how you're expressing yourself, you're using your body language. Their ability to comprehend is going to come from the whole of what you're doing and not just the words you're saying. They rely more on tone of voice, facial expression. They continue to need emotional connection and meaningful activity. Meaningful activities is super important with people with dementia. It helps keep their cognition in the best shape it can be. And then in late stage, they may respond to familiar words, phrases, or songs. She talked about some reflexes, the way that music sticks with people for a very long time, that somebody might not have very many words, but they'll be able to sing along to Happy Birthday because they've been singing that for a very long time. And a lot of the late stage communication involves body language and using the 5 senses. So we'll look at these stages a little bit more closely. So communication in the early stage, changes you notice, difficulty finding the right words, takes longer to speak or respond. And in our very fast-paced culture, we need to just wait. And that is a gift we can give people, because when you're a volunteer, you're showing up to slow down. You're not a nurse or a CNA, and we have great nurses and CNAs, but they have a big patient caseload. You're showing up just to listen and be with that person. You may notice in the early stage that people are withdrawing from conversations and struggling with decision-making. To connect, ask them, how can I help with communication? Keep your sentences clear and straightforward. Leave plenty of time for conversations. Don't rush or push. And include the person in conversations that affect him or her. Include them in planning for the future. Then changes you notice in the middle stage. Increased difficulty with finding the right words. Lots of times repeating familiar words or inventing words. They don't necessarily mean the same thing. My grandmother said the word vacuum a lot. She liked vacuum, but it didn't always mean vacuuming. They might speak less frequently, lose their train of thought, communicating through behavior rather than words more often. To connect, approach a person from the front and say who you are every time. I'm Becky, I'm a volunteer, I'm here to spend some time with you. Maintain eye contact and get at their level. So if they're in bed or if they're seating, make sure you get on their level. Don't criticize, argue, or correct. Pay attention to your tone and take your time. To connect, join the person's reality. Sometimes this might feel dishonest to some people. If the reality is, there's this video that HBO has in a documentary where the patient's complaining about snakes in their room. They come out of their room. They do not want to go back to their room. And the CNA says, I'll be right back. I'm going to take care of that. And they're gone for a minute and come back. And then they say, I got all the snakes. It's clear. That's joining them in their reality and making that space safe so they can go back into their room. Sometimes that might feel dishonest. I think it's loving. It's meeting them where they're at and helping them feel better in their space. Let the person know you hear his or her concerns, whether they're expressed through words, behavior, or both. Provide a brief answer, respond to emotions behind the statement. And then communications in the late stage.
Oh, it's more middle.
Oh, it's middle stage is more. There's more. Use short sentence and basic words. Speak slowly and clearly, one person and one question at a time. You'll notice when you visit patients who have dementia, if you're visiting them in a common area, to the best of your ability, if you're able to pull back and go into their room or find a place that's quieter, you're going to have a much better opportunity for connection, because when there's things going on around them, it's going to be a lot harder for them to focus, to understand what's going on between the two of you, and for you to be able to really make that connection. You want to limit the distractions, be patient. And when you aren't understanding what a person is desiring, sometimes doing multiple choice is helpful, giving them an opportunity to choose if they can't get the word themselves. Offer a guess, fill in a word. To connect, give multiple cues, avoid sudden movement, write things down. I have noticed, and maybe Amanda knows the science behind this, or Jeff, or one other of the brilliant people on this call, but when people are understanding what I'm saying, if I write down a simple question, they can read it and give me an answer. When I've worked with a few people, and even writing yes or no, that's sometimes the reading helps with the comprehension when the speaking doesn't. Avoid quizzing. Don't ask too many questions over and over. To connect, respond empathetically and reassure. Join the person's reality. Provide reassurance that you hear and understand. That really gives a patient dignity. If they seem anxious and you want to cheer them up, I think that it's great to distract them and try to cheer them up, but it also is important to validate the feeling that you're seeing. So, Amanda, you seem a little sad today, or you seem a little anxious today. How about if we go outside and look at the garden? Validate what you see in them, that you're noticing the person, the humanness in front of you. Focus on the feelings, not the facts. Validate and redirect the person if necessary. And then late stage, communication and late stage. So this focuses on really communicating with the senses, using the senses in the activities that you do and the way that you communicate. You'll notice that communication is reduced to few words or sounds. Sometimes this is called word salad, when people aren't able to really get a word out, and they might get out things that are kind of mixed together, or they might not get any words out at all. They may respond to familiar words or phrases like songs that they've known their whole life, that you can leave out a word and they could fill in. To connect, listen for expressions of pain and respond promptly. Help the person feel safe and happy. Continue to bring respect to each conversation. Keep talking. Use all 5 senses to communicate. And this next slides just show you a few different things you can do to connect with the senses. Touch. If the person's comfortable with touch, if they weren't ever comfortable with touch, they're not going to be comfortable with touch in late stage. But if they're comfortable with touch, lotion, putting lotion on someone's hand, pet therapy, that's often something that is used in a lot of memory care, visit with animals, sculpting with non-toxic materials, hold the person's hand, stroke his arm or back. You'll notice sometimes that people have a fabric on their lap and they're doing a lot of touch that way. Communication through sound, this is huge. There's so much research and different things about the way that music can tap into some really deep memories. And playing music when you see the person, it might not be that you use your words at all and just play some songs you learned that they liked. Reading books or poetry or scripture or newspapers to the person, letting them hear the gentle tone of your voice, being present with them, giving them the dignity of holding presence with them, even if they're not able to engage. I can go to the next one. Through sight, pictures are just awesome. And we have phones that can bring up a lot of pictures. We try to find things out about patients that you visit with. So if we know that they were really into traveling in Europe, you can pull up lots of pictures from Europe. You can look outside, look at photo albums. All those are very good ways to connect with patients who have late stage dementia, or any stage, really. Connect through taste. We'll avoid that one mostly as volunteers, because we don't feed if your loved one, you could feed them, but we don't feed people with dementia, but you won't feed our patients. But a lot of the times you hear that as a person's dementia progresses, their tastes become similar to the taste of a young child. They love sweet things, the ice cream. We had a nurse who said the ice cream's melting. This person's probably close to end of life when the ice cream starts to melt. Connecting through smell. Smell is so amazing because it takes you back to a memory. And so a lot of times in memory care units, you might notice that they've baked something, because baking cookies or brownies and creating that smell is really actually a great, just gives people comfort a lot of the times. You can be creative if you have some essential oils and dip cotton balls in them, or have herbs or spices, going outside to smell the flowers. You might not want to use fragrant lotions with your patients because they might have allergies to those things, but smell is a great way just to, when you're with someone that you don't think is able to communicate that easily verbally, you might go into that time with your patient and think, okay, how can I change up the environment for this patient today? Whether it's taking them for a walk to a certain place in the facility, or just creating an environment that might awaken some different senses than where you found them. A lot of the times, especially our facility patients, people are overworked in facilities, and the volunteer showing up for that hour a week is going to be a really essential way to help the patient get some time of connection that isn't about personal care. And so you showing up in that space is really, really helpful. Wendy is going to now take it away with some other activity ideas. Wendy has been a life enrichment person at a facility before.
Thank you, Becky. Becky, you did a great job. I love this. So let's think back. You just learned about the 5 senses of what you could do. We talked about having meaningful activities, which is going to always help. And then refocusing on that gem analogy. You can take all of that and you can put it into activities for people with dementia. But I would like to invite you to think about your own reality as well. We've just told you a lot of things, and yet you're walking into this with your own reality, your own triggers. And we know that some of you get burnt out and have said, I really just can't work with another dementia patient. I'm going to ask you to be curious about what you could do. I was a life enrichment coordinator, and my first day of training was in the dementia unit, and my trainer got sent home with the flu. And there I was in the room with 12 people at varying levels of the disease. And I simply have no words to even tell you what that was like. But I will say that after 3 years of working with this population, they became my favorite population. And it is because of all the things that have just been discussed about that uniqueness of that individual. It doesn't go away, it just changes. So looking at this slide, if you're, this little quote, I love it. The advantage of a bad memory is that one enjoys several times the same good thing for the first time. So imagine that. It's, it's goodness if that's what you can help focus them on. So that's your goal, as well as finding a way to make this fun for you. It can happen. You can make it fun. So if we could go to the activities, you can put it all up.
Okay,
So I'd like to have, when you're in a room with varying, if you're at a facility, you will only be with our patient, but you might be with more. And it's okay, because what you're going to want to do is make sure that you are aware of the capabilities. You might be with the patient in their home, but they might be with their spouse in and out. Making sure that you don't want to give them something too hard for them to do, because then that will increase their frustration level. And you want to be sure that they can do the solo activities, or you engage in them. And we have, as we just did the 5 sentences, there's all kinds of things you can do. You want to avoid overstimulation. So depending on the time of day, if you have a patient with dementia, you probably don't want to do late afternoon. You may not have been told that they have sundowning, but that's when everybody gets tired, right? By the end of the day, we're all like, oh, when's the end of this? And you don't want to be the one sitting there with that. Focus on enjoyment over achievement. That one's always fun if you can do it yourself. I tend to be a taskmaster, and there's always something you have to accomplish. This is not the time for that. I think it would be fun if you were to look at the examples and perhaps put some things together, so that when you have a patient that has a diagnosis of some type of dementia, that you have things to bring with you. You don't have to look around their house. And while it's not to be disrespectful, when my kids were going out and taking care of younger people, they would take a fun bag. That bag would have something that's new, and you coming in with something new is going to help you with increasing their interest level. So anything to do with art, baking and cooking. Now we aren't doing the tasting. Smelling is great. And spices, I believe, was on that. Was that included? Spices have always been a good one. You could do a taste test with that, but you would want to make sure that they don't have any swallowing issues. Manipulation, I know it may sound like it's for small children, but if you have any large beads and stringing, this one's fun. For some reason, it's just something that shows an accomplishment, but it's something that they can do, and it feels like they can go on. Large puzzle pieces are really dependent upon the person and where they're at. Some of them may choose to put those puzzle pieces in their mouth. So that's something that you've got to always be careful about, is small items and pieces. When we're talking big puzzles, they're big puzzle pieces. As Becky had already referred to, reading and videos, those pet videos are hilarious. And if you can find out what you'll know their date of birth or their age, and you'll be able to bring in music that you can get singing to. Dancing, of course, is always my greatest pleasure. So getting somebody in a wheelchair, you can dance with them in a wheelchair, and it's usually accepted by them, and the family. Dominoes and matching games, that would be in the so I know Amber's, I think she was talking about Amber's, Ruby's. Ruby's aren't going to be able to do the dominoes and the matching game. But then photos, you can always take photos from magazines. You don't have to ask for their personal photos, but you can always do storytelling. So now we're going to think about it in your reality. When you're looking at these assignments, you might see the words hallucinations, delusions, paranoia. I can see you all going, oh, not for me. I'm not going to do that one. But now you know that that doesn't have to be a scary thing. That's just a definition of some activity, of some behavior that they have. And you have the tools. You definitely have the tools on how to deal with that. So be curious. And we're going to give you a video next. The acting's a little funky, but it really does play out on what it's going to be, what you might run into and how you might redirect. Okay, go ahead.
Have patience with me. I think I can get this right this time, but we'll see.
Hallucinations are seen.
Okay. We're gonna got the sound on.
Seeing or hearing something that is not there. As a rule, if the hallucination is not upsetting, don't intervene. Connect, don't correct.
Behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia are almost a whole separate category of symptoms. Many people conceive of dementia as losing one's memory, losing one's intellectual functions. And of course, that's the core aspect of it. But with that, oftentimes there are secondary behaviors that arise.
He likes to go out and about and just walk and visit with dogs. He might see one or two dogs, but in his mind he's talked about 17 dogs. He has a bit of Lewy body dementia, so he does see things. And he has great conversations. When
there's a dynamic and over 30, 40, 50 years of a close relationship, a marriage usually, there's a certain expectations of each partner. And when dementia sets in and that person with dementia is no longer as able, it's sometimes very difficult for the partner and caregiver to adapt and fill that gap. So sometimes there's friction that arises.
Why are you wearing that? I told you that yesterday. These were all mistakes, but they weren't deliberate. They were natural feelings that you had because your partner was changing. You didn't know what was happening with the brain.
Toby! Toby! Come here, boy! Come here, boy! Toby! Where's that dog? Where's that dog at? Come here, boy. Get over here.
Jim! Jim!
Come on, boy.
Stop it. You're going to bother the neighbors. They hear that all the time. I've told you before. Toby is gone.
He's just here. I just saw him. I heard
Listen,
him.
how many times do I have to tell you? He died 6 years ago. He's not here anymore. It's all in your mind, all right. The dog's been gone 6 years.
My dog?
Yes. I've
He's
told you a number
gone?
of times I can't stand this anymore. How many times do I have to tell you? He's not here anymore, Jim. Your dog is dead.
Sometimes people can lose touch with reality or develop unusual ideas because they're making mental mistakes. They're forgetting things or misplacing things and jumping to other conclusions.
They're not really mistakes. It's just human nature. What you do when you see someone doing something that they never did before, you correct them. And you don't correct. You don't ask questions. You just make them feel comfortable, make them feel useful, and include them with what you do.
Redirect is an approach that can be successful in supporting the person as you deflect their behaviors.
Toby! Toby, come here! Toby! Come here, boy! Come here!
Jim!
Where's that
Jim!
dog?
I was just in the side garden picking some roses.
Have you seen Toby?
A little while ago. Smell the flowers. How beautiful they are.
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah.
I like those.
I think they're lovely.
Yeah.
And you know, I'd like to just take you out there so that you could see them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to come with me?
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's go
Take
for a
care,
walk.
dear. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Yeah, look at all these beautiful roses out here. Aren't they beautiful?
Delusions may develop from the person trying to make sense of their environment through their long-term memories. A frightening or traumatic event from the past may be triggered by recent changes or introducing unfamiliar surroundings or people.
I had an alarm system put in, but he didn't like it. He didn't like that sound of that woo woo, the alarm. It reminded him of the war. Something about the war when he was in Britain during the war in the Navy. He was in the engine room, and that's a very noisy place to be.
Delusions are false beliefs. A person believes their delusions even when there is proof that they are not true.
In terms of the actual inherent behaviors that can come out, sometimes, unfortunately, the behavioral and psychological symptoms take on a tone of paranoia.
One behavior in particular is the occurrence of paranoia. This is not a constant with my mom, but it does surface from time to time. And so if, for instance, I say, gee, that was fun seeing you yesterday, and she says, you did not, why are you lying to me? Then this is probably one of the most challenging things that I face.
Why are you here? Why don't you come sooner?
Mom, I'm here at the same time every Sunday.
Well, every day. Well, why don't you come on the day you're supposed to come?
I am
when
here.
I need
It's
you.
Sunday. I come every Sunday at the same time.
Ted, you don't even care, and you know what? They've taken that new person, that skinny one. She took my purse, and I know she took my purse, and it's
Mom, no one's taken your purse.
Well, she did. I saw her there, and it's got my pearls in it too. It's got my pearls in it. I don't know.
Your pearls are probably hanging in the closet. No one's taken your purse. You lose your purse every Sunday. We spend 2 hours looking for it.
What day are you coming on?
I come every Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Well, good. It's about time. And now if you'd only come when she was here, that would be the best thing, because she's taken my purse,
Mom,
Ted.
no one's taken your purse. It's probably just somewhere you've hidden.
And it's got my pearls in it too.
Mom, your pearls are safe somewhere.
blame me a lot of time for when he went out to the garage, he would go to look for something like a hammer or a chisel or a nail or what have you, because he thought he could do a little project. And all of a sudden he couldn't see it. He couldn't see where he had placed these things. And he said, "You've moved them again. Where have you put them?"
Many caregivers and support systems can handle the memory loss with reminders or other approaches, but it's the challenging behaviors that really wear people down and become very upsetting.
Distract the person by pointing their attention to something else. Redirect them by engaging them in an enjoyable activity.
No, it's the same thing. It's the same truth.
Guess who I ran into?
What? Who?
Percy Phillips.
Percy Phillips.
Remember Percy, the old choir master?
Percy Phillips.
What song was it?
Phillips.
You used to sing
Percy Phillips.
Amazing Grace.
Oh, I know. I hate that song.
Oh.
No,
Well,
Percy Phillips.
you used to sing,
Amazing
what was
Grace.
the other one? Blue Moon?
Blue Moon.
Yeah.
Blue Moon.
Can you sing that for me?
You saw me standing alone without a dream in my heart, without a something on my own.
When you're in a situation where you've set off a trigger and this person is responding to the trigger, you quickly need to regroup yourself and figure out how can I distract, how can I leave this? Because you have to remember the short-term memory is their struggle with their short-term memory. So let's change gears. Did this person love to eat, love to bake, loved his dog? Open the door, get the dog in. Do whatever it takes to distract the person from what you've just done. Because you're remembering, but now they've already moved on to something else.
We know that there are a lot of changes in brain chemistry that come with dementia, and that doesn't just affect the cognitive realm, but also the emotional and behavioral and even the sleep-wake patterns that people have.
Hearing noises at night or seeing shadows can lead the person to believe there is an intruder.
There's a man in my room! There's a man in my room! Susan!
Susan! Kate, are you okay? What's wrong? What's the matter? Talk to me. There's a man in your room. What? Are you okay? Talk to me. Talk to me. What's the matter?
No, it was just a dream, Auntie Kate. There's no one around.
He was right there.
No,
Susan.
he wasn't.
Go look again.
No, you're just dreaming. I have to go back to sleep. I have school in the morning. Go back to sleep, Auntie Kate.
I can't. He's right.
Calm down.
Do not get angry and argue with the person. In the moment, this fear is very real to them.
Right there. He was
Over there?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I'll go
Look,
check. I'll go
look,
check.
There he is.
It's okay.
There he is.
No. Oh, I see what it is.
Where? Susan.
Auntie Kate, it was just the window. The curtains were blowing in the wind. I can see why you thought it was a man, but it's okay. It's
sure?
fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Sure?
It's just the curtains. I closed the window. It's not gonna happen again. Yeah,
You're
it's gonna be
sure?
okay. You know, it's 3 a.m. You make the best hot chocolate. Why don't we go have some in the kitchen?
Oh,
It's gonna
Susan,
be
you're
okay.
such a good girl.
What becomes more important is her comfort. And so, moving from straight honesty, we move to perhaps omission. And then I think the next step was just agreement for the sake of harmony.
Becky, are you there? Oh, that's what we watched.
I'm right next to you on my screen.
I can't, I don't have any of your pictures on my screen to avoid the shadows. So I think this is our last slide. We're going to open it up for some discussion. I will actually finish this slide up since all of you are in various stages of having been a volunteer with patients with dementia, or maybe you've thought about taking a patient with dementia and you haven't because you're not really sure how to handle that. We want to hear from some of you about what you've seen when you've been out with these patients and these families. What kind of approaches have you used? Really want to hear if you've been out with patients and you enjoy that kind of work, why you enjoy it, and what makes it a good fit for you. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now so we can all be together again. Open it up. Any questions? We can start there. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Jill.
I don't have experience yet with a dementia patient, but as all of us, I'm sure, know people who've had dementia. My understanding is that maybe it's in the later stages, there can be a lot of anger and even some physical aggression. And so I assume we just handle that the same way, just try to de-escalate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Situation.
So normally we would know if a patient with dementia tends towards aggressive behaviors, if they've been a danger to their people they live with or in the facility that they're in. We wouldn't even accept a volunteer request for that. That would be sort of where we draw the hard line for a volunteer, is if we know that that behavior occurs, then you're not even going to see that assignment. Now, on the other hand, it's possible that that's a new behavior for that person when a volunteer is there. As with all volunteer training, you're always going to put your safety first. So trying to de-escalate is fine, but I wouldn't stay within a physical distance of that person. I would make sure that I was near an exit and try to de-escalate as much to get a family member in if you could get that, or a facility, somebody that works there, so then that you could get yourself out of that situation.
Okay, thank you.
Sense? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
I've worked with a number of dementia patients in the past, and it is so true that they are so different. And some of them are downright funny. And I just have found that having a sense of humor about, well, I'm obviously not with every patient, because, you know, it doesn't work with every patient, but just maintaining a sense of humor and enjoying the humor of the patients that seem to never lose theirs is just I think one of the most rewarding aspects of some of the patients I've worked with in the past.
Thank you. Go ahead, Anne.
I have visited with a number of different patients at different stages, and I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One regarding to repeat the instructions exactly the same. I might take a little issue with that, because you got to look at what words you used. You know, if you're talking about the shoes, maybe they're thinking of them as boots or slippers or something like that. So maybe they're not following you because of whatever your word choice. And then using the word choice, don't give them choices. I find that creates a little agitation. It's like, okay, now it's time to go sit on the back porch, rather than asking them if they want to go sit on the back porch. They can always say no, but if you give them, well, should we watch TV or go on the back porch? Then it just creates some agitation. And another thing that's been very helpful with me is, I've had a couple of patients that have very specific childhood memories. And so then I call up pictures on my iPad or get a book that has something old. Like there was this one woman who grew up in the Northeast, and I was able to find some old pictures of the movie theater in her town and the church that she used to go to and things like that. And that was very helpful in stimulating memories and conversation and discussions. And of course, she didn't retain any of it, so we could do it over and over again and give her the same enjoyment each time.
Yeah.
I love that, Anne. I really appreciate the reminder of not giving choices in the way of like, would you like to watch TV or go to the garden? But instead, even when you show up as a volunteer, I think it sometimes feels like, is this a good time? Can we visit right now? Is giving someone dignity and choice, which is usually a good thing. But it might be better to say, I'm here to visit with you, rather than do you want to visit now? Because they might not know what to say. And if you say, I'm here to visit right now, and they say, I'm tired, I just want to go to bed, well, then honor that. But to be able to not present yourself with a question is the first thing you say.
And they seldom remember me. So it's always, okay, I'm Anne, I'm here to visit with you now. And again, not giving them the choice initially, but always giving them the opportunity to disagree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good.
I almost think, somewhat from what you're saying, Anne, that maybe like someone in later stages in a facility where you would even simplify it down to, you don't even need to say, hi, I'm Anne, I'm a volunteer with True. I mean, that's a lot of information. And what is a volunteer and what are they doing with True, rather than, yeah, I'm Anne, how are you? Or we're gonna, I've got the pictures, will you look at these pictures with me? Really keeping even your introduction as simple as possible.
Mm-hmm. Here to keep you company. I'm here to look at this book with you. I seldom bring True into it unless they really know what
you got mute.
Yeah.
And I love the treasure hunting you did and finding the story and then being okay showing up and hearing the same story again, and the research, the creativity you employed in that. It's awesome.
What other ideas or thoughts, Amy?
Hi there. I have my first dementia patient right now, and she does a lot of word salad, but I've been fascinated to be showing her books. Like right now, I have a book of A Wit and Wisdom of Bob Ross, which shows a painting on one side and a quote on the other side. And she can read the quotes to me. Mm-hmm. She can read them. And we talk about the beautiful artwork on the other side of the page. And she is a painter, so I knew that she would be interested in something like that. I will be interested in future relationships if a book like that would be useful.
That's awesome, Amy.
Really brilliant, Amy.
Yeah, that was a great way to pull out some of her history and then engage her in something.
Just another quick comment. A book I have found is very helpful is Norman Rockwell, like the coffee table book. Yeah. Because they're so familiar to a number of our older residents that they'll, again, trigger memories and be something that's familiar, but not too complicated.
You're making me think that maybe we need a resource manual of things that you can use.
Yeah.
We need a coffee table book library.
Janice, did you have something?
One of the things I was just going to say is, and this is with my husband since he has Alzheimer's, is if you play some music or you learn about their music, it might bring up emotions. They might cry. And I just encourage people to just let that be okay. Not to get, oh no, or I shouldn't have done, but just let it be okay. I know my husband, sometimes I put on Creedence Clearwater Revival, which brings up a lot of similar music. And I can just see him tear up, but he's loving it all at the same time. So just letting it be okay.
That's a good point. Thanks, Jen.
That is something you will encounter. People will be less inhibited. Their emotions will be closer to the surface. So don't be afraid of the emotion. Jessica?
We had an interesting experience, which was great to see this education, because I think it kind of reinforced the approach we were taking initially was okay. And we had a patient at the care center and believed her husband was in the suitcase talking to her, and the husband had died, 12 years prior. And so we kind of acknowledged he was there, what does he look like? What's he saying? And then the daughter would call and would say, you need to tell her that her husband's dead. And then so we flipped it and it went south fast, and it was so impacted her emotionally very, very hard. So it's like, it's good to see, okay, just kind of go along with what they're seeing, what they're feeling, and that way. But as a care center volunteer, you don't want to go against the family and the wishes, but it was interesting. So good to see this.
That's a tough one, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
When you told that story, I also wondered maybe about like final gifts, and if this person was really close to end of life, those experiences that some people have with
Absolutely.
seeing their deceased loved ones, and if that was part of just her process too. That's hard. Got a couple more
I want to
minutes.
be a resource for you all. I loved someone had the idea, maybe it was Wendy, of having a bag if you have a patient with dementia, of being creative, like Anne was sharing, and Amy, just taking kind of things with you to see what does elicit the connection.
If you have a patient in a facility, we always appreciate when volunteers come to the activities department or to the social worker and talk to us a little bit about the patient that you're going to see. We might be able to give you some actual tools from the activities room that would help that patient, certain parts of the facility, or maybe which parts to go outside. So I don't know, I always, as a facility worker for so long, I always want to encourage the volunteers to try to make those connections with the staff at the facilities, the memory care, and see what you can learn about the patients through them as well.
Oh, that's a good idea.
One activity that the certain segment, it was usually women, we're just going to say it, they like to fold things. So if you can get a table out in the hallway with them and just have the laundry brought out at the facility, and you can just fold towels together, that's something that can really create some connection time too. Any other final thoughts? We're right at 7 o'clock.
Along with the folding laundry, I've had 2 patients now that we essentially go through her closet. It brings up memories for her. She feels the fabrics. We do folding, and then we put it all back, and it's a rewarding activity, I think, for them.
That's very creative.
That's fun. I should do that with my closet.
Go ahead, Amy.
You know, I was at the facility a few weeks ago, and they had a group of people with a balloon and a net kind of playing like balloon volleyball together. And I was wondering if anybody's ever taken a balloon and tried to do that one-on-one with a patient before.
Definitely. Put a balloon in your bag if there's no latex allergy,
Don't
or a
take
beach
a latex one.
or a beach ball. But that gross motor is one of those things that stays with a person the longest, and it makes you laugh. I mean, it's hard not to smile when you're batting a balloon or a beach ball.
So I will say bubbles can be a problem or fun. So it would depend on your person.
Got to try and figure it out.
Yeah. Because they're kind of scary if you're delusional or hallucinational.
Wendy, do you have a couple favorites from your enrichment days that you'd like to share?
Painting, so fun. Memories in the making. You just simply take a piece of paper and you can put tape across it, and they see the little spots that they have to paint, and then you pull off this, and they've got this beautiful picture that
There's a
has
link
a
to
frame.
what she's talking about in the resource parts of the PowerPoint, Memories in the Making.
And you can use, prompts. Show me the garden you had when you were little, if they were gardeners, or there was a woman that had 3 PhDs in music theory. Astounding, right? She painted this with watercolor. It was just watercolor paint, right? It was just color. And she started crying and said she had never been so inspired in her life. Okay, that was awesome. But, who knows what it is that's the trigger for that person. But it's fun. So really just see what's fun for you, because that will come across. Because me, it's like, yeah, let's do this. And then, it's contagious.
Thank you for your yeses, for picking up assignments with people who have dementia, and your willingness to enter into those relationships and connection. And I mean, it's been fun to hear just a few people that shared already. And Janice, thank you for sharing about your husband and kind of what works. That piece about emotion really is important to recognize, because that happens with a lot of patients, actually. If a person has a stroke, often they'll show emotion a lot easier too, and that we can just sit in that space with them.
Thanks for taking this time tonight. Good turnout. Hope
so
it was useful. We'll get it on posted with a link in case you want to review and have some resource links. If you've got some special ideas you didn't share, email me. Well, maybe we'll compile volunteer best practices.
Oh, I like that. That's a great idea. We have some great volunteers. You guys are awesome. I mean, really, we talk about you behind your back often. Just
all the time.
Yeah, we got so lucky.
I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.